welcome to Bad Barry's Bar. Glad you could drop by today. Got a couple of stories for you that may cheer you up a little bit. First one concerns a little Midwest town there, and there was a guy there, Big Tom. And Big Tom was in a car crash, got run over and was really mashed up, disfigured. So they take his body down to the morgue. And they need identification. It's very hard to get him identified. And somebody said, well, he's got two very close friends that are always with him and they can identify him, I'm sure. So the police found these two buddies of his, you see, and went down to the morgue. So the first one went in, had a look at this body under the cover. He said, turn him over. So they turned him over and he looked, he said, no. He said, that's not Big Tom. They said, you sure? He said, no, it's not Big Tom. So out he went. The other guy came in, the other friend, had a look. He said, turn him over. Had a look. He said, no, it's not Big Tom. They said, are you sure? He said, no, definitely not. They said, how do you know that? He said, because Big Tom's got two arseholes. They said, what? He said, yeah, go down the town. Everybody knows. They always say, here comes Big Tom with the two arseholes. So much for dead bodies, huh? Well, talking about rednecks, there were two rednecks met up one Sunday morning outside the house, and they're going down to the pub to get a beer before lunch. And as they walk along, one of the rednecks said to the other one, he said, listen, hey Silas, he said, you know, when you make love to your wife, for heaven's sake, draw the drapes. He said, you know, your house being down that slope, people in the road are looking straight into your bedroom. And he said, last night, in fact, there were half the street were out, watching you through the window and having a real good laugh. And old Silas said, well, the laugh's on them. I wasn't home last night. Now, talking about looking into houses, you know, I was a young boy during the Second World War in England. And we moved out of London when the Blitz started down to Bognor on the south coast, which is just a little seaside town. But as it turned out, it was a bit of a hotbed because round Bognor were 4 airfields, Ford, Tangmere, a big American bomber base, and Portsmouth. So all during the war, long after Germany had stopped bombing the big cities, you know, London, Liverpool, Birmingham, Manchester and so on, we got these hit and run raids. The Germans would come in low over the channel to try and get under the radar. Then they would zoom up and bomb these 4 airfields and then turn around and zip back to France in safety. So we saw a lot of fighting all during the war, and of course as boys we weren't worried about the war. Honestly, it was an adventure time for us. We loved it. Every day almost you could come out and there were vapour trails in the sky where the dog fighting was going on. And of course if there was a crash, somebody got shot down, British or German, boy, all the boys were beeline for wherever it was to try and get there before the police put a cordon around it so we could get souvenirs, pieces of bodywork and so on. And we all had a bunch of souvenirs, shrapnel, bullet cases and what have you. You know, it was really great fun. Serious for the people involved, but you know, for us kids it was great. Well, one day we had a bomb hit one of the houses very close to us. It landed in the garden, and you know, it took the front of the house off clean as if somebody had come down with a cleaver and chopped it off. It was like a big doll's house. There were all the shelves with all the furniture in there. You could just stand and look at it. You almost felt you could move stuff around. It was really quite incredible to see something like this. But of course, the people inside were okay. And I should perhaps mention that during the war, there were 2 types of shelters that we had. There was the Anderson shelter and the Morrison shelter. Now, the Anderson shelter was out in the garden. And they sent you around the corrugated iron like a small Nissen hut, and you dug a big hole in the ground 4 foot deep, put the earth out, put your little Nissen hut in there, and then put the earth over and round it. Had a door on the front, you put duck boards down because these things were cold, they were wet, they were really horrible, but they were a shelter. Now the other shelter was a Morrison, and the Morrison shelter was like a big steel table, and you had that in your house. We had one right in our kitchen, we were lucky. And these things were probably 6'6" long, maybe 4'6" wide, sort of thick steel top on big corner pieces, and they had a square wire mesh that clipped on all round and a sprung base, and you slept in those. And these things were really almost bomb-proof. In fact, one house got bombed not far from us, and the people were in the Morrison shelter, and it blew the complete Morrison shelter clean across the street, right over the two-storey houses opposite, and landed in their yard. And the people inside just had bruising. That was all. Those things were really marvellous, but it was quite interesting. So the war, for some of us kids, was exciting, believe me, and really no fear. The other thing was that when we used to go to school, where I lived, we used to go to Chichester. We used to go on the train to get to school every day, and that was another adventure. But when we used to go walking out in the fields there were German prisoners of war working in the fields, and I never saw any guards with them. And these guys had battle dress on, which was like a mauve colour, with big white circles on the front and back, and on the front and back of their legs. And we would walk by the fields and they would say "Guten Morgen" to us. No guards there. I guess they were just bloody lucky that they weren't fighting on the Eastern Front or something, you know. I'm sure they don't want to run away into the fight. I mean, they were happy to dig the fields or whatever they were doing, but, you know, they were quite friendly to us kids, I must say. All right, that's a couple of my little adventures during the war. Thanks very much. See you all again, I hope. Bye.